32 ACP versus 380 ACP in pocket guns, and what I have today is our Hornady critical defense ammunition. I'm using my kel-tec P32 with a 2.68 inch barrel to test the 32 ACP, and my Ruger LCP 380 ACP with a 2.75 inch barrel to test the 380 ACP. So these are both critical defense FTX bullets. Our 32 auto is a 60 grain rated at 1,000 feet per second, and our 380 ACP is a 90 grain rated at 1,000 feet per second. I don't know which barrel lengths those are rated through, probably something like a 3.5 inch barrel. So we're definitely going to lose a lot of velocity in these short barrels, but critical defense is basically meant to be fired through short barrels. So I'm really curious of what kind of performance we'll get. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. I got some numbers on there, getting my chronograph set up, and believe it or not, first few shots I couldn't get anything, and I just realized I have to move the sensors over just a little bit, move the whole thing over, and then it reads fine. That's a lot of times that's what my issues are. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. I'm going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. The reason why I started doing that is because a lot of times I would not get hollow point expansion ever to know what the hollow points are supposed to look like, because they would clog with denim. So I just started doing a plain clear ballistic shot. So we're going to do a plain clear ballistic shot, and then we're going to do more of our real world simulation, where I'm going to have 4 layers of cotton sweatshirt material on this first 3-inch piece that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we'll have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard right here to represent ribs or sternum. That'll be more of our real world simulation, and we'll see how, if we get expansion, what they're supposed to look like compared to more of our real world simulation with fabric and rib simulation in there. And then of course I'm going to shoot at the steel target to see what kind of shootability I can get with these, follow-up shots, recoil control, and all that, see if there's a big difference. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm about 5 yards from the target. First up, we have our 380 ACP. We're rated at 1,000 feet per second. Let's see what kind of velocity I get in this little LCP here. See how close I get to 1,000 feet per second. 908, 907, 915, 906. 888, so not too bad, pretty consistent overall. Little bit of recoil there, it hurts my hand just a little bit, especially my finger, with that recoil coming back to that trigger. Now 32 ACP, again, we're rated at 1,000 feet per second. Let's see what we get in our little kel-tec here. See how close we get to 1,000. 789, 817, 824, 811, 785. So definitely a lot less power going on here, but this is actually pretty pleasant to shoot, as we're that 380 in such a small pistol. Actually, to me, it hurts the way a 44 Magnum hurts out of my Model 69. I don't know why. It's just pretty thin and it hurts from the recoil, but this pretty pleasant to shoot. So let's hit our ballistics gel block, see how these two compare. All right, our best potential shot into plain clear ballistics. Let's see how these compare. So 380 ACP. All right, put that with our 32 ACP. Let's go take a look. All right, so those both had pretty subpar penetration. Going through plain gel, you know, we got hollow point expansion. Obviously, if you get hollow point expansion and you're working with energies that are as low as these, this can sometimes happen. So that's, you know, a lot of times people say if you're going to carry something like this, you should carry FMJ, because, you know, this is going to happen, which may or may not be true. Neither of these met 12-inch minimum that we want to see, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to work. What we have going on here with our 380 ACP is we got about 10.25 inches. Camera parallax will make it look like that bullet track is further up from where my finger is, but 10.25 inches. It'll do even more when I come this way, even worse. Our 388, our 32 ACP is at 8 and 3/4 inches. So definitely not 12 inches that we want to see. But you have to also understand that, you know, 12 inches, the minimum was set in place because you're looking at going through an arm from the side and still hitting through the thoracic cavity into it and hitting a vital organ. When you look at like almost 9 inches of ballistic style, we're talking maybe 5 inches of actual human flesh. So that would be enough on a front-on shot. It just would not be enough going through a side shot. So pretty subpar performance overall. But let's put on our denim, put in our MDF, actually our sweatshirt material, put in our MDF, and see how they compare in more of our real-world simulation. All right, more of our real-world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt material, 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent our pectoral muscle, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs. And let's see how these do in more of our real-world simulation. 380 ACP. All right. Let's hit that with our 32 ACP. Let's go take a look. All right, so this is why you don't judge the performance until we put in more of our real-world simulation. And this is also a reason why you don't necessarily say, oh, only carry a full metal jacket, because you know, you'll never get what you want to see. I disagree, because a lot of times when you hit fabric and you hit something hard like a rib simulation, you do lower that expansion threshold a little bit, which will give you more adequate penetration. And we got more adequate penetration with both of these. So, you know, as many of you know, this is kind of a unique feature of ballistic testing, using this, but I think it really sheds light on more of a real-world simulation. So we can see, especially with that 380 on the bottom, that we were definitely fully expanded in this first 3-inch piece here, and this fabric here didn't really have any bearing on whether that would expand or not, and then it went through that expanded. And that's really the point of that plug in the front of those bullets. A 32, it looks like maybe it's starting to expand out a little bit, but it didn't expand nearly as big. And with a 380, we have pretty adequate performance, to be honest here. We're looking at about 13.25 inches of penetration. So we have more than 12 inches. We have expansion. So out of a little pocket pistol, that's actually pretty darn good. I would say that that's adequate. Now when we look at our 32 ACP, again, we have a lot less penetration, but it looks like we still expanded. We just didn't have quite enough energy. I didn't run the numbers of the energy yet, but I think the 32 might actually be under 100 foot-pounds, is where this is more like maybe 120, 30, 40. I didn't run the numbers, but you know, it's up enough to get enough penetration after expanding. But our 32, we only went to about 9, I'll give it 9.75 inches here, and it expanded. So what we're seeing here, so both of these would be fine on a front-on shot, but if you had to make more of a weird angle shot that has to go through more material to stop a threat, our 380 could probably do it, but our 32 might not do it. So both of these did pretty good for what they are. The 380 had a lot more felt recoil, but then it performed a lot better. Our 32, much easier to shoot, but you know, didn't perform as well. So let's take these out of block. We'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through our plain gel. Here is our 380 ACP. Really fantastic expansion. You can't ask for much better than that out of a 380 ACP through a barrel as short as that, because 2.75 inches, I mean, you're really talking about kind of like a 1.5 inch barrel if you take away that cartridge length. Maybe not quite that much, but more like 1.75, something like that. 32 ACP. I'm really surprised that we got expansion with that. That is a very low powered cartridge, but yet we got really good expansion with that. So here's our plain gel shots, 380 and 32. Very, very impressive. And we go through our medium density fiberboard here. Here's our 380 ACP. This is pretty typical of what we see going through our medium density fiberboard. is that rib simulation impact will shrink that size of that bullet down just a little bit, and it'll make it go a little bit deeper because it's not quite as wide, so it can easily punch through a little bit deeper, but still very fantastic overall to see that. Now when we look at our 32, this is really shocking to me. This is the 32 going through our real world simulation. We actually got really good expansion, and I would say it's actually bigger from what I'm seeing here than the one going through plain gel, but somehow it still penetrated more, which is really interesting that it could do that. So I am really just surprised, pleasantly surprised across the board of how well these little things performed, especially that 380 for it to get adequate penetration with some expansion like that. And I'm even more surprised with this, that like the power levels we were working with, that shouldn't have expanded, but it did. So very fantastic performance across the board. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, 12 yards from the target. I want to see what kind of practical shootability I can get with these. And you may have noticed I'm throwing these in my pocket. When I do that, I'm actually making sure that they're upside down, muzzle forward when I put them in like this. So it may look unsafe, but I know what I'm doing when I'm doing this. You know, they're upside down so they don't flip in my pocket, and they're facing forward this way. So just thought I'd make a mention of that. But our 380 holds a maximum capacity of 7. Our 32 holds a maximum capacity of 8. So you get one extra round of capacity. So what I want to do here is I want to fire some shots. I'm going to do like 5 at the body and then try to go for a couple headshots and just kind of see how these two compare for just my practical shootability. Just pull it up, get a sight picture and see what I can do. So 380 ACP. Oh, a little bit of an issue there. Don't know why. Okay, it was a failure to extract. Keep going. All right. So honestly, that doesn't do too bad. You know, and I talked about it hurting like a 44 Magnum before. Not necessarily. It's not quite like that, but it is sharp in my hand, so I feel a lot of pressure here. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of recoil that comes back on my fingertip, and that hurts really bad. But that's honestly not something that I'd be concerned about, you know, carrying this and having to use this in a self-defense scenario. That'd be the last thing that would be important. A malfunction, though, was a big deal, but I want to make a mention, I fire a bunch of rounds through both these. I didn't clean either of them before it came out, so that could be part of the reason. Let's see how I can do with our 32 here. So much easier with this. You know, comparing the two of these, it's kind of like shooting 9mm versus 40 Smith & Wesson through my G2C pistols. There's actually a big difference in the amount of felt recoil. This thing takes virtually no real effort to land them on target. Shot pretty easy for me. As for the 380, I have to think about it a little bit, and that kind of slows me down. So let me back it up just a little more, continue to shoot with these and see how they do for me. All right, 40 yards from the target. You know, I like coming back this distance and kind of challenging myself, and I do have a marker for 40 yards if you guys didn't know. 25, 40, and 75, I have markers for all those distances, so I'm definitely shooting from those distances when I do this. I've had a few people actually tell me I'm not from 40 yards here, which my measuring tape says I am, but what I want to do is just kind of shoot real slow, see how these things do for me. You know, the reason also why I started doing this stuff is because people would always tell me that stuff like this, these pistols are meant for card table distances, and then you can't hit the target beyond like 5 feet. It's impossible. So I always thought it was fun to come out and show that that's not necessarily true. But our 380 ACP, let's see how I can do with this. 40 yards from the muzzle. All right, another failure to extract with this. And this is the thing I've noticed a lot of times, when you put ammo in a gun that's a little too light and the ammo's a little too powerful for it, if your gun isn't perfectly clean, you'll start getting issues like this. Keep going here. a few misses there. You know, I didn't adjust my hold at all. It just, some of them hit center and some of them hit to the right for some reason. 32 ACP. Let's see how I can do with this. A little bit to the right again. So first couple misses, I was focusing a little bit too much on the target and less on these sights, and I'm finding that with a gun like this actually has a lot smaller sights than even the LCP here. LCP sights are somewhat pronounced. This is nothing, but these actually hit point of aim pretty well. So looking at this test, if I had to pick one of these to carry, you know, honestly, I would pick the 32 because I put a whole bunch of rounds through this since I got it. I have not had a single hiccup with it at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that while both of these are pretty low caliber, low power, you know, when you're putting something that's as powerful as a 380 and something this small, unless you got a super tight grip on that thing, I've noticed that it can malfunction. And it's very hard for me with my size hands to get a good grip on this because it just wobbles around. So I find it impossible to find a good grip to get on that. Plus, if it gets a little bit dirty and you mix it with that, it just doesn't want to run reliably. As for something like this, you know, it tends to want to run reliably for me because it's really not jumping back in my hand at all. So to me, it runs a little bit better. So I personally would rather have between these two pistols this on me than that 380 because I can't get the thing to run perfectly reliable with my hands. But looking at the ballistic test here, obviously our 380 did quite well. It did a little bit better, maybe even a lot better than the 32 ACP in our terminal ballistics. We had adequate penetration with that real world simulation. And I trust that more than what I trust plain clear ballistics, because plain clear ballistics, you'll get what I call over expansion. It's going to expand a lot bigger than what it would actually do in a living target, as where my real world simulation, it's going to expand the way it would in a living target. And to get, you know, over 12 inches of penetration with that, you know, I'm pretty confident that that would work all the time. Now, our 32 ACP, you know, here's the trade-off. It's not going to penetrate as deep, so you have to make a more front-on shot, but at the same time, you have an extra round of capacity, and it might actually be easier to make a front-on shot with that. So really is a trade-off here. Obviously, our 380 ACP wins this, if we're going to say which one did better. But in my mind, the 32 wins this one because I feel more confident with it. So that's what you get today. A little interesting test between 32 ACP and 380 ACP Hornady critical defense ammo. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.